Hello and welcome to Satellite 56. My name's Charles and this is Mark chapters 13 and 14 in 2 minutes. Mark 13 is about Jesus discussing the end times. His disciples are worried, but he tells them not to be deceived by anyone who comes after him claiming to be the Messiah. He finishes by saying that no one will know the day or hour when God will come to judge the living and the dead. Mark 14 is just as gloomy as the chief priests and teachers of the law plot to kill Jesus. They decide they can't arrest him until after the Passover festival, or there'll be a riot. Jesus is sat having a meal when a woman enters and pours a large jar of expensive perfume over his head. The people watching are outraged as the money could have been given to the poor, but Jesus tells them to leave her alone and that she has prepared his body for his death. Judas, one of the 12 disciples, goes to the chief priest and agrees to betray Jesus in return for some money. The disciples are given instructions on how to find a place for them to celebrate Passover together. They find it, and later that evening, whilst they are eating, Jesus says that one of the 12 disciples will betray him. Jesus then takes some bread and wine. He says that the bread is his body and the wine is his blood, through which God will fulfill his promises. They go up to the Mount of Olives, and Jesus says that his disciples will run away and leave him. But Peter is adamant that he won't. Jesus tells Peter that by the time the cockerel has crowed twice in the morning, Peter will have denied 3 times ever knowing Jesus. They come to a place called Gethsemane, and Jesus tells his disciples to sit whilst he prays. Jesus becomes very anxious and prays that God won't let him die, but if it is God's plan, then let it be done. He turns to his disciples, but they have fallen asleep. He's upset that they couldn't even stay awake for him. Judas arrives and kisses Jesus on the cheek. This is the signal the armed guards had been waiting for, and they rush in and arrest Jesus. His disciples run away in fright. Jesus is taken to the high priest's house where everyone is waiting for him. After many failed attempts to prove Jesus is guilty, the high priest asks Jesus a question. "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the blessed God?" "I am," says Jesus. The high priest throws it back to his gang and says that Jesus has committed blasphemy, claiming to be God. All the priests and teachers vote that Jesus is guilty and that he should be put to death. Peter is waiting outside. A woman asks whether he was one of Jesus' followers, but he says that he doesn't know what she's talking about. The cockerel crows. Another person claims that Peter was one of Jesus' followers, but Peter says he wasn't. Then another person argues that he definitely was. Peter loses it and shouts, "I'm telling you, I never knew the guy." The cockerel crows a second time and Peter realises what he's done and starts to cry. Ugh, things aren't going so well for Jesus and his disciples, but what can we learn from these chapters? Well, to kick us off, here's my friend, Professor Noah Tal.
Thank you, Charles. Yes, I would like to talk to you about Passover. Because you see, Passover was a Jewish festival in which the Jews celebrated the time that God freed his people from slavery in Egypt. Now, the way that this happened was that the Jewish people had to sacrifice a lamb and paint their door frames with the blood of the lamb. That night, God sent a spirit of death which killed the eldest son in every family in Egypt, except for those who had painted their doorframes with the blood of a lamb. Shortly after this, Pharaoh, whose own son had been killed, agreed to the Jewish people being set free. Now, how does this story relate to the story we're reading? Well, I wonder, who is the lamb in this story? Who needs to be sacrificed in order to free the people? Maybe we'll find out next week. But until then, I'll pass you back to Charles.
Thank you, Professor. I just want to hit on one more thing that we can learn from this chapter, and that's about failure. You see, Peter denies Jesus 3 times. He pretends that he never knew Jesus. And that's a massive mistake, a massive failure on his behalf. But Peter goes on to become this incredible leader, this incredible person of God who does amazing miracles and leads the church from nothing into something. So how does it happen? Well, here's a great thing, is that God uses us even when we mess up. God doesn't see us mess up once and go, "Oh, well, that's it, I'm never going to use them, I'm never going to make them do amazing things, I'm not going to help them." Instead he goes, "Okay, we're going to use that, and we're going to learn from your mistakes, and we're going to move you through that to do amazing things." So if you ever feel like you've messed up, if you feel like you're not a very good Christian, look at Peter. Peter was probably the worst Christian in the world at one point in time. And yet, he goes on to be this amazing man of God. Well, folks, next week is the last episode of this series on Mark's Gospel.
join us then when we'll be looking at Mark chapters 15 and 16 and we'll find out the ending to this incredible, amazing story. Until then,